There it is.
That's good enough.
Saga wins.
One round up.
Round
John, match
three.
point, could reset things
Fight.
right here. Oh, there it is. Almost 50% damage. One fireball, one uppercut.
Great opening for John.
Chun-Li's still looking to charge that super. Long way to go. She needs to make things happen. Early denying forward. Stand forward to counter the throw attempt. Uppercut. Uppercut
John
again.
Choi.
For as long as I can remember, American Stick has been a bit of a laughingstock, and when it comes to the three major type of arcade levers, Japanese, Korean, American has always been treated as basically a joke. I can't think of many notable fighting game players who used American Stick competitively. The only one that comes to mind is the old school example of John Choi. And a lot of people even back then are like, why is he still using American Stick when we have discovered the glory that is the Japanese stick? And I will say though that this bias against American Stick is not unwarranted. It isn't out of nowhere prejudice against us poor Americans, because even to this day, if you go to an American arcade, it is a disaster. American arcades are the worst when it comes to quality of parts used. They usually opt for the cheapest parts and maintenance of said parts. I can't tell you how many times I go to an American arcade, find a machine that I actually want to play, like my local Ride and 2 machine, but the damn levers on this sucker are broken. Not only are they broken, they are broken for years. American arcade operators that I've experienced rarely maintain or update their machines. So for the most part, you're throwing your quarter in and you're just hoping the machine works. And even places that are like barcades that are supposed to be like the hot new renovation, bringing American arcades back. Even the barcades that I've gone to, I walked out pretty angry. I walked out pretty upset because they were not maintaining their arcade stick parts, which I feel is borderline robbery. If I put a quarter into your Street Fighter 2 machine and the stick is too broken for me to do an uppercut, that's basically stealing my money. And the thing about this is when it comes to American arcade stick parts, there doesn't seem to be over the years a really strong standard. Like the local arcade I go to, some machines like the Raiden machine have these weird floppy bat tops that are just suggesting doing inputs. And then you go to the Bubble Bobble machine and it has, again, this sort of bat top, but these ones feel different. They almost feel like Japanese sticks where they have a real click to them. They have a shorter throw. If they were maintained, they could be probably pretty cool, but they're maintained so poorly, they're just, again, flopping around, but you can feel the click to them. And then you'll go over to the Simpsons machine, and the Simpsons machine looks like it has Japanese ball tops. But no. It feels like you're driving a car without power steering. You're just like, and you're just feeling nothing. You feel no clicks, you feel no activation of the micro switches, you feel no plausible tension. It's just a metal bar that you're yanking on and hopefully some inputs come out of it. It's truly, truly terrible. And so for the most part, the prejudice against American arcade sticks is quite justified. However, what sort of changed my mind or got me thinking a little bit more about the possibilities of American arcade stick design was, again, I went to my local arcade. Most of the legacy machines that I grew up playing and loving, my Tekken 4 cabinet, all that, they're long gone at this point. They even got rid of Initial D, which I was outraged by. So all my favorite stuff is basically going away, and replacing it are these like Pandora box type of things. But one of them that is in sort of a traditional looking cabinet is this something called iCade. I'm not promoting or sponsoring or saying iCade's good or not. I don't know, it's all right. But the thing about it that's cool was that it had a brand new shiny American stick lever that I'd never encountered before. I'd never seen this kind of lever before. And I went to play it and feel it. It has a nice grip and texture to it. And it has a nice tension to it. And it actually feels a lot like playing a Korean Fanta stick. And so I'm sitting there playing this iCade, playing like a Gunsmoke and stuff on it. I'm like, hey, this is actually like a legit lever. The reason why I think a lot of people like American sticks when they actually work is because they have a different tension system than either a Japanese or Korean, obviously. So the Japanese tension system is a lighter smaller spring that clicks, that has a lot of feel, that has a lot of accuracy. With Japanese sticks, you tend to use your hands and fingers more because they're smaller, shorter throws, lighter kicks. And of course, Japanese sticks famously have gates, either square, octagonal, or if you want to put a circle gate on them. Where when you get into Korean levers, they have essentially a sort of circle gate. It's like a soft square gate. And their tension system is very different than a Japanese lever, where they have this rubber tension. And instead of using your fingers and your hand as much as you do as Japanese stick, instead you use your arm and your wrist more, and you do a lot more of like full arm motions using Korean stick. And a lot of your motions with Korean stick are actually one movement. Like if you want to do a quarter circle on Korean stick, you just do a hand motion and the stick guides along that hand motion. It's almost like playing tennis and swinging a tennis racket rather than Japanese stick, which is more like manipulation using your hands and stuff like that. I bring this up because if I was to describe American stick, I would say it is the in-between point between these two, where I believe it uses a spring system somewhat like a Japanese stick, but it's definitely a much larger spring system, and it gives a more full hand, full arm feel to it like a Korean lever. And also it has that same circular-ish gait like a Korean lever. But the difference between Korean and American that I'm able to pinpoint is American stick has this very strong, consistent kickback to the tension like a Japanese lever. But a Korean lever, which is my preferred lever, has a bit of an acceleration on the tension where it kicks back harder off the gate and then sort of loses speed as it gets more the center, which is really good for certain games like Tekken, but is a little bit tricky for other games like Virtua Fighter, just depending on the style of inputs that you're needing. And so with an American stick, it's kind of halfway in between that, where you're getting the full arm hand motion that you have to use on Korean levers, but you're getting the more consistent spring tension of the Japanese stick. And so I thought this style of design is actually quite interesting. But let me quickly clarify, in making this video, this is not me saying that I am switching off of my favorite Korean lever to move over to an American stick. Nope, I'm still going to be a Korean lever user, still use that lever that I talked about many years ago, still holding strong. But as someone who is an enthusiast for arcade stick levers, it did pique a lot of curiosity in me, and I felt like if I wasn't playing my Korean lever, I probably would actually switch over to using American stick over Japanese stick, not because it's better, but because I really enjoy the feel of it. And why I wanted to make this video is because I do think there are probably a lot of people out there who might actually like and prefer the American style lever feel, but just never give it the chance because of its reputation. And so with all this in mind, it's been months, almost up to a year now, where I've been wanting so badly to make a video about American stick levers. There's only been one big problem. I don't own an American stick lever, and I do not want to build an American stick lever, because the thing about American stick is that they are big suckers. They are big mamas, and they don't fit into Japanese arcade stick cases. You also can't fit full color Korean arcade stick levers in them either, for that matter. And so for a long time, this concept of talking about American arcade stick has just been floating around in my brain with all the other crazy video ideas that float around in my brain, until very recently, where Scanline City, a fan of this channel, hit me up and asked me, hey, I'm coming out with this Maz arcade stick. Do you want to try it out? And I was like, do I want to try it out? Yes, I've been waiting for an opportunity to get my hands on an American arcade stick without having to build one and spend all the money and, deal with all that. So this is the perfect opportunity. So the American arcade stick that I'm using in this video that I'm going to be talking about and referencing was sent to me by Scanline City, who does sell these on his website, and he did a fantastic professional job. So I don't want this whole video to be a plug for the Maz stick. I'm sure there are other alternatives, and you can build your own custom American arcade stick. But if you want something that is really quality made, and you don't have to do all the assembling and battling the electronics and making your own case. And I've made my own cases over the years, and they've been ghetto fabulous, and the internet's made fun of me for them a bit. But if you want something that is really professional, quality, and well made, this Maz stick is the real deal. And Scanline City seems like he's a really cool guy to work with. So if you want something else done to it, I'm sure he'd be willing to custom it out a little bit for you. For example, there is an alternative to the Maz that he also has on his website called the Neo. So the thing about it is I love this arcade stick box and design. It's really nice and heavy and tall. It's perfect if you play with arcade sticks on your lap, and that's how I play my arcade stick, on my lap. That extra height and weight really helps it feel nice and solid, and you can, if you lose, beat your opponent to death with it. It's that heavy duty. But as much as I love the box and the convex American buttons, don't do concave, kids. Just don't do it. I actually still prefer the Japanese style button layout rather than this straight cut. And I also want to stick my Korean lever in this box. And so he's working on this other type, this Neo, that's gonna allow you to house a different type of lever than an American lever while still getting those American buttons. And so the fairest assessment I can give of the Maz and the Neo stick is that if you are a newcomer to arcade sticks and you're just wanting to get into them and you're looking for something entry level, I don't think I can recommend these to you because of the price. These are expensive, guys. Let's just be frank about that. Let's be honest about that. These bad boys are expensive. If you're an entry level new person, you probably want to get a used Hori stick on eBay for like $100. But if you are an arcade stick enthusiast, especially if you're looking for a really quality case with really quality buttons that's going to be very versatile, where you need that extra versatility like I do, where I don't just play Japanese lever. I play on Korean lever, I want to play on American lever, and I play on Japanese lever from time to time. So I want 3 different lever mounting options, and then I want the ability to have those giant American buttons. And then I want a very versatile product that can connect to all my consoles because I play on Xbox, PS4, PS5, PC, PS3, Xbox 360, just anything with a USB port basically. This sucker, if you get the ultimate board version, is gonna be a really great fit. Scanline is this great middle ground where if you want a bunch of custom stuff done, but you want it done in a clean, professional way so the internet stops making fun of you, I do feel comfortable recommending both his products and his customer service, and both are very important to me. And so now let's talk about the performance of this American stick lever, the IL Lorenzo. And do I know for certain that this is the best version of the American stick? I do not. There could be better versions of the American stick lever. I'm just starting to get into them. I just got the case recently, so I'm just starting to get into them. But this does seem to be a very standard, common version of the American stick lever. So that's a good starting point, at the very least, I think. So what I went ahead and did was run it through my typical lever performance testing metrics. So I went ahead and fired up and played some Tekken with this bad boy. And unfortunately, I would say one of the weak points of the American stick is going to be Tekken. And the reason for that is the American stick has a very strong, powerful kickback tension. And so for a lot of games, that is actually going to be really useful. The one exception to this is kind of Tekken. And the reason for that is because there are some inputs in Tekken where having that strong kickback is like really good. For example, doing electrics. If you just want to throw electrics with Devil Jin, the American stick is going to be quite good for that because the way that tension and diagonal release works, it actually works really well for throwing electrics, especially with that really hardy spring action American button. You just bam, bam, bam. It feels good. So you can get a good amount of electrics out on this sucker. But the problem with it is when you're going to be doing Korean backdash, which is probably more important than electrics, let's be real, and doing side steps and sidewalking, that's where the really strong tension is going to be a bit more troublesome, I think, because there's basically too much. You don't need that much tension to be doing Korean backdashes. And so, yes, you can perform the input and you can perform the input consistently, but your arm after about like an hour of this is going to fall off. You're gonna be like, ugh. And as your hand gets more tired, your consistency with your inputs is going to start to drop. And I do know that there are players out there, I've talked to them, who play Tekken on like really high tension springs and stuff and high tension Korean levers. I just think that is unnecessary. You don't need that much tension, because when it comes to doing Korean backdashes, especially when you're starting to do a lot of sidewalking, that was another thing that was tricky because of the tension, where a sidewalk, you want this very gentle brush on the input. You up, brush, and then you up again. So you do a nice clean sidewalk, and sidewalking is really important in Tekken. Again, the tension makes that unnecessarily difficult because you just don't need that much tension to do sidewalks, to do Korean backdashes. It's great for electrics, but you don't even need that much for electrics. If I were to summarize my thoughts on the lever needs of Tekken, I would say that Tekken is a bit unusual in that it tends to want a lot of single inputs stringed together, whereas a lot of other fighting games want a lot of double inputs or motions. Tekken is kind of unique where it just wants single inputs, but it wants single inputs quickly strung together in different ways. So for that, I've always felt like a light medium tension on an arcade stick lever, whatever it is, a light medium tension on a JLF, a light medium tension on Isai Mitsu, a light medium tension on a Korean stick. I just think that is the type of tension that works with Tekken. And so if I were to modify this lever to fit with Tekken more, if you're a Tekken player, I would try to make it lighter, somehow make those springs less tense. And maybe there's a way to do that. I'm not familiar with American stick modding at this point. I think it's a little bit of a tough fit, but Tekken is not the only fighting game. The next thing that I fired up is some Guilty Gear. I played some Guilty Gear XX, and funnily enough, American stick feels like a really good fit for Guilty Gear, because what Guilty Gear wants is really snappy inputs. It doesn't need a bunch of inputs kind of slightly strung together like in Tekken. It wants really hard, snappy inputs, and you know what? This stick delivers hard, snappy inputs. For example, instant air dashes felt amazing. I know in Strive it doesn't matter anymore because it's macro to a button, but for the old school Guilty Gear players, yeah, the American stick felt really good for Guilty Gear because like the instant air dashes having that nice snap, bam, snap and back in place. The instant air dashes felt fantastic. And then doing the circular motions feel really good on American arcade stick. I get why John Choi stuck with an American arcade stick if he was doing Street Fighter 2 and maybe doing some Tiger Knees or something, because the Tiger Knee input, which you do in Guilty Gear XX kind of for Dizzy for her instant off the ground bubbles, that Tiger Knee style input felt really good because the snap and the tension, and because American sticks have a bit of a longer throw on them, you can really hit those corners. And so doing those circular Tiger Knee style jumps and everything, that felt great. So I could legitimately see, if you were a Guilty Gear player, trying out American stick. Now, is it going to be like night and day better than Japanese stick? Probably not. But I do think it is quite viable in that scenario. And then also the same thing with the super jump inputs. Because of that really strong snap back to neutral, super jump inputs also really work well on American arcade stick. I wasn't having any problem with any of the super jumps in Guilty Gear. And to kind of follow that up, I decided, okay, now let's try some King of Fighters 98, because King of Fighters 98 like has all of the inputs. All the inputs you want to test, King of Fighters has them all. So I was doing the short hop inputs. Short hops felt great. Then I started doing the hyper hops. Hyper hops, very consistent. Then I started doing dragon punches. Dragon punches feel really good on American arcade stick because of those really deep pockets for the diagonals. Because the diagonal is so huge, you can't miss it. It's like the broadside of a barn. You cannot miss those diagonal inputs. Same thing with quarter rolls. Quarter rolls feel nice and fantastic on American arcade stick. You can do it all with one hand motion like a Korean stick. However, to be honest, I think one input that the American arcade stick really struggles with is the double quarter. So a single quarter, one hand motion, no problem. The double quarter, however, the American arcade stick at this tension struggles with because it snaps too hard, too fast. So basically, if you're going for a double quarter, if you try to do it like you do on a Korean lever, we go bam, bam, it doesn't work as well because when you build up the momentum off the first quarter, it can often bounce that stick into the opposite side and actually get a wrong input from the other direction. So if you go bam, bam, it'll start to bounce out of the double quarter input. And then you're like, okay, so I'm gonna have to guide this in the quarter, which you can get the input, of course. But I think it is weaker at the double quarter because the tension, again, is snapping so hard it will over snap. And then so to prevent that, you kind of have to guide it a little bit more, and then that slows it down. So it's kind of this ugly middle ground, because with a Japanese lever, you can get the double quarter with like your fingers. You can guide that lever into a double quarter with your fingers. And with a Korean lever, you do it with your hand, one hand motion, bam, bam, like that. And unfortunately, the American stick lever kind of doesn't do well with either scenario. It doesn't do well with the finger movement because the gate and the throw are longer, so your hand has to move further. And so it's gonna take you longer to guide that with your fingers and your hand. But you can't do the Korean hand motion slap because it over snaps. The way this could be fixed though, I think is pretty simple. Just lower the tension a little bit. So then this brings us to the final test, shmups. And you know what? I think American stick is great for shmups. I think there's no issues even with this tension because it just gives you this really nice, clean inputs. I think if you're playing like Toho and you need those really micro movements, the tension is going to be a little bit of a pain in the butt to deal with. But for the most part, I think American lever is actually quite good for shmups because you get a really snappy input with it. So you go right and it'll snap back to the center for you. And then the diagonals, you can get really clean diagonals with it. That's something that's a little bit trickier on Korean stick, is to get those really nice, clean diagonal movements. And then it has that really nice pop to it that makes it a little bit easier to handle than a Korean lever, where with Korean levers, you're always having to remember where the gate and micro switches are. And once you master that, there's a lot of stuff you can do with it that's really cool. But the feel for Korean levers takes a bit of time getting used to. And that's kind of my overall summary of American lever, actually. I would say that if I were to rank the levers, at this stage, at this lever, it is a step down from overall performance of like a really tricked out, modded out Japanese lever, or a really tricked out, modded out Korean lever like I use. I would say its closest equivalent in terms of quality is just your standard JLF. You know, you go to buy a Hori stick and just the standard JLF that comes in there, which is still a quality, solid lever. And like the standard JLF, the real hidden power of the American stick, of this IL Lorenzo American stick, is the accessibility. This is one thing about JLFs that I don't give them enough credit for on this channel, that I'll give it to credit now, is that one thing about a JLF is it just feels really accessible because it has that really nice snapback and pop. It helps train your hands for what they should be doing when you start getting better at playing on arcade stick. And I think American levers are very much like that as well. They help train your hands for how to do proper inputs because the lever is literally snapping you back into place. And so if you are an arcade stick enthusiast, I recommend at least giving this a try. Get your thoughts. Maybe you'll end up liking it way more than you think. If you're a newer arcade stick player, it's still gonna probably be a bit of a barrier to get your hands on an American arcade stick, unless you have the money to drop on a Maz stick or something like that. And I do think there is actual merit in the design. And so in my journey of tinkering with arcade stick levers, I think modding some American arcade stick levers could be really interesting and fun. And it's going to be nice practice for next summer when I go to Galloping Ghosts and play on the arcade sticks there. That is also another hidden merit of American arcade stick, is that one of the biggest arcades, Galloping Ghosts, from what I understand, uses American stick. So getting good at it is going to be really useful for that as well. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, a little return to talking about arcade sticks, a beloved topic on this channel. Adios, everyone.
So thank you to the $5 patrons, 100, Accepting Panda, Admiral Coconut, Anhold, Alexander Pfeiffer, Anthony A, Arcade Hell, Arrow Viper, Auto Named, Beam Pit, Bo, Ben, Beto Dames, Boghog, Borgie22, Brian Shiver, Chase Palumbo, Chattel Maltese, Chris Yusufovich, Chronic Burnout 3, Claricliff, Climby Coyote, Coast, Color Boy, Cooksand666, Cook Some Soup, Corey Mark, Des Audio, Danchi, Darren Griffin, Dave Hansen, David Crespo, Delta Tango 6, Dick Jones, Dingo, Disco Stas Leia, DJ420 Praise It, Dr. Boss Key, Elias Alonso, Evan Serafet, FCK, Fiskin, Frames Per Human, Francisco, Full Set, Game Boy Guru, GPM, Hausu, Jake Ryan, JLab, JB RPG, Jink Hans, John Kelly, George Sand, K Horse, K2, Contain, Praise the Boys, Low Casting, Mieshpa, Malaise, Mars Bar, Matt O'Leary, Maz, Megadeth 859, Minung, Michael McCord, Mitchell Y, Moonro, Nathaniel Davis, Neon Dagger Games, Okalooks, Pedro Perez, Psycho Blizzard, Queen Charlene, Raul, Real Skeen, Retro Schmupper, Riff Mason, Rolf015, Scanline City, Sebastian, Seesaw FW, Shazzy, Shmup Junkie, Sirapong, Biters STG, Steady AI, Steve Fiction, Street Magic, Superfunk, SW1335, Tamzarian, Decaramucho, Taze, The Boot Rex, The Dirty Screech, The N1, The Old Bensta, Tony Latundula, Toho Rizardi, TRM, Sugumo, 2YU, Twilight EX, Unikoi Roots, Ursua, Ushi Mushi, Vic Viper, Beautiful, Labby Legs, Yosef, Zachary Patton, and Zeal.